This was a story about Columbine, and it was the shootings at the Columbine High School. This was written by a journalist who really covered that story, and it's meant to really make you think about why did it happen. So that large image of the sky, the beautiful subtle white text in the sky, really kind of nostalgic in a sense. It's quite beautiful, very powerful. This was fiction in which stories are nested within each other. They're kind of tumbling and turning inside and out like a narrative Mobius strip. So they kind of slice the text halfway through. They really wanted to show how these stories are nested with the visual. This is The Abomination by Paul Golding, and I love this beautiful illustration, very simple, the profile of the illustrative profile of the boy. And this story has to do with kind of emotional alienation, isolation in a gay childhood. So it's really dealing with some interesting issues. There's kind of a delicacy to it. There's a little bit of a sadness and a nostalgic feeling to it. I love the text. This A here is just really beautiful in this font. And you can see that it kind of ties up here with The Abomination. Black and white is often very powerful. It's sophisticated. You can do really interesting things with the graphics. And what's nice about it is when you put something in black and white, there's this natural integration that occurs and also this sophistication. And this was just beautifully done. I think I have another version of it, and I'll just show it to you over here. So this was another version of the book. If you kind of Google this, this is what you'll get. So you see they took out the graphic, which is interesting. And they kept it simple typographic design. A novel here becomes very prominent. This is The Color of Water, a black man's tribute to his white mother. So you can see that beautiful photograph in the background, the child. It's kind of a photo montage of a child and a mother. It's almost barely visible, but when you see it, it's very captivating. And then the text is kind of laid on top and framed. There's some blue being worked into the design. Different fonts in this design make it more powerful. Often there's kind of a rule that you really only want to use one font. Maybe if you're being really, out there, you might want to use two fonts, but 3 or 4 fonts is almost never done. You can see here, though, that it can be successfully done. This is Michael Crichton, I think, The Lost World. I've never read his books, but I thought this was just a really beautiful example of simple graphic. It's just a simple graphic, becoming very powerful, integrating well with the text. There's a beautiful balance going on here. Nothing If Not Critical. This is selected essays on art and artists. You can see the graphic in the background. It's the back of a picture frame, so it's really appropriate to what the story's about. The text is integrating well, so I love how the back of this frame is really framing the text. So this is a story about a young woman staying as a guest in a Napa Valley farmhouse, and she becomes trapped in a fight for survival with a self-proclaimed homicidal adventurer and races to warn his next intended victim. So intensity is what it sounds like. It's intense, it's chaotic, it's over the top, and the cover for this particular book just kind of communicates that instantly. It feels intense. This is another design for it, so you can see how you're getting more of the mystery, the profile looking, the eye. This one you kind of feel that danger more. So I would say with the first design you're feeling kind of that chaos, that intensity. With this design you're feeling the danger. It's more dark and disturbing. This was a retrospective of of Chip Kidd. It's renowned book covers. He was a famous designer, and it's a memoir of his career in publishing, and it's just beautifully done. Simple. So for this design, it's interesting because you first look at it, you're kind of wondering what it is, and then when you read the novel, you realize that the protagonist in the novel smokes an exotic brand of cigarettes. And so for this particular design, the designer decided to imagine what the pack might look like and then design that pack of cigarettes and put it on the cover. I love this. Very simple but effective. You want to look at it because of the difference in that cut out piece of paper and the background. So there's text, there's a little bit of texture, and can I have a with you? So you're really forced to kind of get in there and read that middle text, which is a single distinct meaningful element of speech or writing used with others. So it's really getting you to kind of look at it, feel it, pull it closer, examine it. This is Celavision, once more, kind of a very intense design, and this was a relentless spoof of cable's home shopping mania, and you get that. You get this intensity, this mania occurring. Love the really agitated visual of the mouth. This was a collection of poetry which speaks to both the ancient world and World War II. It's suited to the comparison and contrast of a Renaissance fresco and an old newspaper photograph. So there's really two designs here, but they're integrated by this simple word poems that's in the middle here. And you know, one of them is color, but it's a very kind of subtle color scheme, and the second is black and white, and the combination, it's an interesting contrast. So it's the darkness and the light. Collection of poems. White Like Me. Love this design. Really disturbing how the face is being cut in half. You don't get the satisfaction of seeing the smile and the eyes. You have to imagine it, and you're getting this very jarring block of text instead. And so it's reflections on race from a privileged son. Very powerful. You know, I love the old photograph and the way that they're kind of making you think with this design. This is a novel in the late 19th century. It's called The River Wife. It's as the United States struggled to recover from the Civil War and the spiritualist movement reached its peak, the idea that a person could be haunted by the past moved beyond metaphor. What I love about this design is it's a beautiful photograph. I mean, that's just beautiful, a beautiful image of the woman in her nightgown under the water, her face kind of reaching the top. There's a reflection there, and then you have these little graphics on the side here, really framing it in, making it very just beautifully ornate. Simple white sans serif text, very appropriate, and a beautiful color scheme. Sometimes when you design one cover, you're then needing to design for a series of books, and that presents its own unique challenge. Not only are you designing one book cover, but you're thinking about the series, and you're thinking about how to connect the series visually and bring them all together. So there has to be this visual consistency between each book. And it has to be captivating and really relate well to the subject matter, even though the subject matter obviously changes a little bit from book to book. So here's an example. Here's another example. This is a series as well, and you can see how they're using this really kind of these graphical elements combined with these photographs. There's really innovative typographic design going on here with all three books. They're bringing in these visual elements that tie into the stories. And you always have to, this is, you know, for this specific example, these are three very different types of novels, but there's a loose format to the design that holds them together. There's a visual format, and it's strong enough so that these work together, but also work really well independently. So that's kind of the goal. You want them to look like they belong together. They're obviously part of something, whether it's a series, or, you know, some other tie. They have to belong together, but then they have to function alone as well. This jacket was really beautiful. It's printed on 2 layers to reflect the main theme of the novel, which is concealment, and there's kind of a semi-transparent stripe of white offsets the red jacket and kind of discloses the book's title underneath. So you get this kind of beautiful transparent effect. So sometimes you can do these really innovative things with printing. This is a story of 20-something man's trip through love and relationships. So the game pieces were made by photographing models, then constructing the game pieces, arranging them, and photographing them again. So I love the way this looks like an interface here. These are all separate photographs. Beautifully done. This is a book of darkly funny short stories by Will Self. Each collage images on the cover represents one of the book's stories. So this is kind of a collection of stories, and each image here kind of really represents one of those stories. The illustration was kind of a combination of traditional collage and manipulation in photographs. So some of these were kind of placed together and photographed and really manipulated. This is a story about a young woman, and she's an activist in the Soviet Union, and she's trying to retain her humanity in the face of 7 years of internal exile. And the author actually wrote this book from notes on scraps of paper she had written while in jail, and the cover is meant to feel like a collage, as if it's put together by hand, and it really does that. You can see these kind of scraps of writing here on the side with this hand-drawn font. Sometimes a hand-drawn font is so appropriate. This is The Ice Storm, Rick Moody, and this is a novel set in 1970s, a Connecticut suburb where a freak winter storm serves as a catalyst for a peeling back of suburban veneer. And the key is tied into the book's kind of notorious key party. The ice suggests the literal ice storm as well as the suburb's kind of chilly, emotional facade. And the photographer's house keys were actually frozen in a block of ice, then photographed for this cover. This is The Plague, Albert Camus, and it's very simple. Just, you know, these ambiguous clumps of dots. They could be either groups of people or they could be the virus itself. So it's meant to be somewhat ambiguous. The viewer can read into it what they may. This is another memoir, and it's Henry Petrosky, and it's set in the 1950s, boyhood in Queens, where he belonged to a guild of paper boys. So you see the paper as the cover, very appropriate image, and the 1940s copy of the New York Times. And you know, the designer wanted to make the book look very deliverable. This is an extraordinary collection of images from Sachs medical files. There was no reason to go outside for illustrations because there's so many beautiful illustrations here. So it's Seeing Voices, is talking about communication, you know, for deaf people. And he meets with deaf people and their families, visits schools for the deaf, and he writes, "I had now to see them in a new ethnic light as people with a distinct language, sensibility, and culture of their own." So they're just trying to bring that into this design, almost the cultural aspect of it. This is John Updike, Seek My Face. I love this kind of painterly image in the background. It also feels a little bit pixelated, or you feel that canvas there. And the idea is to use a painting that was half abstract, half not. The best way to do this was to show an extreme close-up detail, and this one is of a painting found in a flea market. This book is about a girl's personal journey set in the Victorian era, and explains why there's a woodcut illustration here. And it's a love story with a soldier during World War I. And you can see, I love, you know, this is a beautiful collage. You can kind of see these marching soldiers down here. There's a novel here. And this little splash of color makes a huge impact. So sometimes a little tiny splash of color really creates a focal point and can integrate beautifully. This is the Catatrophist. I can't pronounce this. And I love just the simplicity of it. There's a very captivating, almost surreal photograph of a man. He's actually lying on a floor, but it's turned upside down, so it looks like he's lying face up on a ceiling. That you get these 2 circles really kind of balancing each other. I love the scale differentiation in the circles, creating this kind of unique, interesting play between the text. This is true stories of love, marriage, and divorce. The honeymoon's over, burnt toast. What better image is there for the end of a marriage? And it's original essays by a variety of different people. But I love the graphic, the simplicity of the graphic and the text, really kind of talking about that subject in a very simple yet captivating, intriguing way.